Hey guys, I'm Azra, and in this Lord of the Rings Rise to War video I'm going to show you a guide about Haldir. Without further ado, let's get going. So Haldir, in my opinion, is one of the strongest commanders in the game, at least in the category T1. And even he is just a T1 commander, he is still S tier in my opinion. So let's analyze this commander. In regards to his typing, he is a balanced commander, which is okay. I think the only typing that is even better than balance for him would be leader, but balance is still fine enough for him to be a threat. Looking at the stats, you definitely want to push his might stat as high as possible. This is going to increase his and also the damage of his army by a lot. Then, as a secondary important stat, I would recommend pushing your speed stat, because Haldir has a Respect 5 title, which is increasing the troops' damage, scaling with speed. So the more speed, the more damage your army is going to deal. And then last but not least, you have focus. This isn't really that important. It is more damage mitigation for your army, that's it. But you should definitely focus on might and speed. Looking at his gear, I have this gear right now, like with the Mirkwood Bow, Elf Strength, his Respect 10 item, and this item is making Haldir one of the strongest commanders. You definitely want to push him to Respect 10, unlock this item, and then you have one of the best commanders in the game. Why am I saying this? Because Warden of the Forest is very important. All of Haldir's units, like in his case, it's going to be elf units in his army, they gain initiative on every round. So unlike Convener, where you get initiative for the first 2 rounds in the bursty phase, you get initiative for the 10 rounds. This is insane. This is why Haldir is so strong with his elven units. 10 rounds initiative. On top of that, you get +5 defense for your elven units whenever battling on wood. And then I'm also running the Trapper's Hood with Hysteria, and also Harp of Lothlorien with Elf Strength. Alright, now let me show you Haldir's strongest build with Eagles. My Haldir, being at Respect level 14, allows me to spend all of these points over here. Now let me walk through why I have spent points into these skills you see over here. Having points spent into Guide is just great, because in the first rounds you will get increased physical damage, plus 45% for all of your allied units. That is insane burst damage. And then when you max it out, your army is becoming immune against stun, and that is also amazing to have. Imagine how you're countering Witch Kings with this, or all the other Nazgul commanders, or let's say Gandalf the Grey, who has stun opener in the first round, or even Gandalf the White has one. And then I have spent 1 point into March Warden of Lorien. This is not because of the damage this has, but because of the evade as a mechanic built into it. So whenever this procs, and it's going to proc every 3 rounds, it's going to give one of your allied units a chance to evade the next damage received. So this is great. This is survivability. You should definitely put 1 point into it. And then I have maxed out Sylvan Elf because of the damage my commander is dealing. It's going to deal physical and poison damage, and the poison is also going to last for 2 rounds when you have maxed it out. So Haldir 2 is going to deal a bit of damage by himself. And then you should definitely max out Forest Agility. Your allied ranged units get a certain percentage chance to follow up, means attacking again in the same round. When you max it out, that chance is sitting at 20%. So each unit gets a 20% chance to attack once more in the same round. The more units you have, the more likely it is for follow-up to proc, which is why I recommend in the troop composition later to have 3 units in your army at all times. Since you are running Haldir with beasts like eagles, you should have beast training maxed out too. Your eagles are hard to conscript, very expansive, and they are going to be your melee tanky frontline. And having self-sustain on them is mandatory, so I would definitely recommend maxing beast training. And then one of his strongest skills, his Respect 5 title, Galadrim, is going to further increase the flat damage you're dealing for the whole of the 10 rounds, because all of your ranged units are going to increase their physical damage by plus 18% when maxed out, and this scales with speed, which is why you should have as much speed as you can. Once maxed out, you also get plus 15 might. So great skill overall. Then if you have any leftover points, why not put them into shield training, because this will make your ranged units receive less damage. So this is good damage mitigation. And if you still have points over, you could spend them into armed escort, or also a very important skill is foresight. Like, there are so many commanders running around with evade nowadays. Gil-galad, Grimar, Undying, Gothmog, they all have some evading mechanics. If you need to hardcore counter them, then just reinvest some points, like reinvest your shield training points into foresight just to counter them. So this is Haldir's first build, the build with eagles and his respect 10 item. Let me also show you Haldir's second build, which you are seeing right now. So as you see, I have removed the points from beast training, since in this army composition he will have 3 elven units, and the third unit, like the beast units, are going to be replaced by 1 melee elven units. That could be, for example, the heralds or keepers if you have access to them. And the points you would have invested into beast training, you can just swap them out and reinvest them into armed escort. So this too is physical damage, and is also going to recover 1 allied unit whenever this procs, and this is going to proc every other round, starting with round 2. And at this point, if you have any leftover points, I would invest them into foresight just to be sure whenever you are fighting against any commander with evading mechanics, you are ready for them. Or let's say you don't have enough points, feel free to just put some points out of armed escort and definitely max out foresight if you notice that you are fighting a lot of commanders that have evading mechanics. Let's quickly summarize the strengths and weaknesses of Haldir. So his first strength is definitely boosting the damage of his army. He provides it with a few skills he has over here. The first one being with guide, like this is increased burst damage, and then Galadrim, which is like flat damage increase for the 10 rounds. And then he also has a follow-up mechanic that too is providing lots of damage for his army. His second strength is definitely that this guy brings stun immunity to the table, at least for the first 2 rounds, but that is enough for him to get the job done. This game revolves strongly around early damage in the first rounds, and Haldir is very good in enabling his own damage while being immune against CC mechanics such as stun. His third strength is, well, since you have his respect 10 item unlocked, you get initiative, and initiative is an amazing advantage. You get to hit first, and that is something priceless in this game. His fourth strength is pursuit, because in this game evade is a very strong mechanic, and if you have anything that can bypass that, like pursuit here with foresight, that is just great to have. His last strength would be definitely low upkeep cost. You can play your Haldir with 3 elven units, being infantry troops such as sentinels, heralds, and also bow knights, and that army composition is very easy to sustain, so he is economy friendly. Let's also quickly summarize his weaknesses. The first one being, well, he might be very good in burst damage, but he only has stun immunity. That means he is open to army madness. Imagine if you have so many damage boosting abilities such as Guide, Forest Agility, and Galadrim, but you hurt yourself because your army is inflicted with madness. So you have to take care of that weakness. His second weakness is, well, while we are here at Guide, look at this. This is a bursty ability. You are weak against not just only burst damage mitigations such as Harbinger of Darkness, Mithrandir, White Council, or Great King, like the skill from Isildur. All of those skills are burst damage mitigation, but you are also weak against flat damage mitigation because Galadrim and Forest Agility can be countered by strong damage mitigating commanders such as Black Serpent or let's say Khaldun. His third weakness is elemental damage. You see, all of these skills, they don't provide coverage against elemental damage, so Witch Kings could potentially wipe you if you wouldn't wipe them first. So if you don't have initiative, you're going to feel the elemental damage of Witch Kings, or let's say a Gil-galad running with Keepers, they deal focus damage. Or how about King of the Dead with Oathbreakers, all of those units deal focus damage and you have nothing to protect yourself from that. His last weakness would be a mix between a debuff and a buff. So let's start with the debuff. There is a debuff called Dishearten, which is reducing the damage of your army by a certain percentage. And then there is a buff called Nimbleness, which is decreasing the ranged damage the enemy army is receiving. So these two skills in combination are very strong against commanders such as Haldir. And the Undying has even both, which is why he is kinda a hardcore counter against Haldir. Let's quickly run over the purple gear Haldir has and let's see which one is best in slot. So Mirkwood Bow for sure is his #1 choice. It has all he needs. I mean, you can run this weapon with his 3 Elven units composition and also with Eagles, that works just fine. Might, speed and plus attack for your range, followed by increased Elven units damage. That is insane. You definitely want to have your Respect 10 item, that is out of question. We don't even need to argue about that. Then as a headpiece you have 2 choices. Do you want to be aggressive? Then go with the Trapper's Hood and Hysteria. Like this is going to boost the Respect 5 damage of Haldir a lot because of lots of speed and plus attack for your ranged units. So this for sure is very aggressive and strong. But what about Madness? Like if you are fighting against Grimar or Sauron or Isildur, they have strong Madness mechanics and they could make it so that you wipe yourself. So in that case, you could just equip a Horseman's Helm with Resolve just to make sure you don't nuke your own army. And as our accessory, I mean, there isn't anything else but the Harp of Lothlorien being the best accessory in regards to purple gear. It has elf strength, it has lots of speed for your elven units and also focus. And what I also like about this accessory is it has Hunter's Mark as an alternative special effect. That way you can counter evading commanders, and instead of putting 7 points into Foresight, which is providing you Pursuit, you are free to spend those 7 points somewhere else. And having a look at his golden gear, I think these are the best items there is. Like the Elven White Knife, lots of might, plus attack, like plus 6 attack, that is a lot. With Might of Elves, which is increasing your elves units damage, that is just great. And then we have the Hunter's Guide. I really think that this is the best helmet he can equip. Lots of might, plus attack for your ranged units again, and it can have Discord as a special effect. For the first 2 rounds, you can just proc Madness against all enemy units. So this would be the aggressive fighting style of Haldir. And then as a second special effect, you can go with Aegis. It's going to make you Madness and Stun immune for the first 4 rounds if you have maxed out this effect. And this is also nice, like it is the defensive option, but I think I would be going with Discord if I had to choose between one of those effects. Looking at our golden accessory, I would go with the Silver Harp of Rivendell. Might, focus and defense for your elves, all of these stats are great. And then you have to decide, do you want to go with Linden's Inheritance, just to have a chance to mitigate damage by 30%. And keep in mind, this just isn't physical damage, it's also elemental damage coverage. And it is great, like 30%, that is a big chunk of damage being mitigated. Or if you want to be more aggressive, just go with Might of Elves and have flat damage increase for your elven units for the 10 rounds. If you want to have like anything to counter evading mechanics, I would recommend to switch over to Harp of Lothlorien and keep your Hunter's Mark. And maybe go back and forth between these 2 accessories whenever you need to swap them. Let me also quickly summarize the ideal troop composition for Haldir's Beast build. Like when you are playing him with Eagles, you want to have like 2 Elven ranged units in your army composition and then also Eagles, and then you just do this. You have an equal amount of these 3 units. If you want to min-max this troop composition, how about replacing your Bow Knights with March Wardens? That would be like the non-plus-ultra army composition for his Beast build. But in case you want to play Haldir with his Elven units build, you could just replace your Eagles with 1 Elven melee unit. In this case, it could be Heralds. Just have an equal amount of Elven units in your army composition, just like this. Or how about we just replace our heralds with some keepers, because keepers are dealing focus damage, and that is very strong with Haldir, and then you are ready to go. Let's also check out some battle reports I have prepared for us. So in this case, you see I am running him in his eagle build. Haldir has these items right now. You see I have maxed out beast training just to have the self-sustain. And then let's also check out Khaldun's gear. He has Easterling Spear with Bane of Mounted Units, Superior Hauberk with Shroud, Trapper's Hood with Hysteria, and Wizard's Firework with Mend. This is the result. Let's have a look in the snapshot page. So we have done 190k versus 160k damage. And we have a decent amount of self-sustain going on over here. This is okay. In the detailed view, we see our sentinels have done the biggest chunk of our damage. Here we are fighting another Khaldun, but in this case we are fighting in his Elven units build. So the same gear as you see. Instead of investing points into beast self-sustain, I have invested them into armed escort. You see the result isn't really that great. Eagles were much better with Haldir. If we check out Khaldun's gear, you see that this time this Khaldun is a very strong geared Khaldun. He has his Respect 10 item unlocked. He has the Warborn Battle Plate, one of the best chess pieces in the game. Harad Cask with Resolve of Man, and Bone Talisman with Evil Man Strength. So a very strong Khaldun, and here is the snapshot page. Only around 160k damage versus almost 200k damage. And in the detailed view, we see that our sentinels couldn't deal as much damage as in the report before. Next report is a Gorbek fight. I am playing him again in his Elven units build, as you see. And then this Gorbek has this gear, the Black Mace with Panic, the Scale Mace with Melee Vigor, Bone Mask with Hysteria, and the Drums of Barad-dûr. So this is the result. Here is the snapshot page. 230k versus almost 240k. And you see this is the detailed view. Here is a Grimoire fight, and I must admit that I could have done a few things better. If I had known that I was about to fight a Grimoire, I would have spent points into Foresight, like max out Foresight. I would have put some points out of Armed Escort and reinvest them into Foresight. That would make much more sense against Grimoire, since Grimoire players are nowadays maxing out Prudence. This is a strong evading mechanic, and I needed Pursuit for this fight, but I didn't have it, unfortunately. So Grimoire has Cutlass with Melee Might, Superior Hauberk with Melee Vigor, Bone Mask with Manipulate, and the Smoking Pipe with Sustain. So this is a strong Grimoire player. Here we have the snapshot page. Only 160k damage versus 250k damage. So Grimoire has by far surpassed us here. And here the detailed view. It wasn't enough to deal with this Grimoire. I also have a fight against Gothmog, and this time I am running Haldir with his Eagle build. You see I have put points into Beast Training. So this is the result we have achieved, and this is the gear of this Gothmog. Cutlass with Flay, Goblin Armor with Gallant, Bone Mask with Hysteria, and Shield of the White Hand with Maneuver. But don't get me wrong, Gothmog is a very strong commander in the game. He has a 2-level advantage, keep that in mind, and also he is running the Trolls of Mordor, which is kinda a good counter against us. Gothmog is increasing that damage in the first 3 rounds by 60%. That is a lot, and these guys have a chance to deal damage to all of your units, like a 50% chance. That is a strong combination against our troop composition. We could have dealt more damage with us being at level 50, and also if we had maybe, like, instead of the Sentinels, March Wardens in our army. So these are just a few ideas of mine how we could have improved this result. Let's check out the snapshot page. We have done almost 200k versus around 245k. So this Gothmog has definitely won the fight. And on the detailed page we see our Sentinels didn't survive long enough to deal as much damage as in the reports before. Here we are fighting against Lords. Lords is going with tanky units. I see where he is coming from, just to like 2 tanky units, Haldirs in case he is fighting mounted units, and Crushers because of the decreased armor special effect, so Lords himself deals more damage. That makes a lot of sense, but you see, this is the power of Haldir with his respect 10 item and Eagles. I am running him with his Eagle build. And then let's check out Lord's gear. He has the Battle Axe with Flay, the Berserker's Raiment with Concentration, Full Helm with Melee Vigor, and the Drums of Moria. Let's have a look on the detailed view. We have done around 220k damage versus 120k damage. And here in the view we see our Sentinels are dealing lots of damage. Here we are fighting against a Black Serpent player. He is a very good counter against Haldir. I am running Haldir in his Elven build this time. And you see this Black Serpent is running these items, Gigantic Hammer with Troll's Command. I assume that he is still waiting for the special effect Rent to drop. It is kinda hard to come by. Then the Scale Mail with Melee Vigor, Arad Cask with Unwavering, and Drums of Moria with Haste of Soldiers. And this Black Serpent player is going with the meta build, like Evil Man meta build instead of Muma kills. And yeah, we are having a hard time against him. Lots of damage mitigation. And in the detailed view we see that in this case our Sentinels have done lots of damage, 101k, while the other units didn't survive long enough to deal a good amount of damage as well. Let me also show you 2 interesting Witch King reports, the first one being with Haldir's Elven units build. So you see, I do have his respect 10 item, I do have initiative, but for some reason elemental damage is totally devastating us, just as I described in his weaknesses part. This is a strong Witch King, don't get me wrong, like the items are okay. Cutlass with Flay, like Melee Might would have been better, but I assume that he is waiting for that special effect to drop. Scale Mail with Melee Vigor, Brutal Helmet with Dread, and Drums of Moria with Haste of Soldiers. Overall, this is a meta build Witch King. He has the right troop composition, and this is what he can do to us, like he totally devastated us. Let's look at the snapshot page. We have done only around 120k damage versus 260k damage. Like that is quite the big difference. And in regards to the detailed view, we see like this is nowhere close to the damage we have done in the reports before. So how can we change this? What happens if we give Haldir Eagles? If you play Haldir with Eagles, you can turn the tides. Like look at this report. Haldir with his Beast build, again self-sustained for his Beast units. And then the Witch King has this gear, Cutlass with Melee Might, Hauberk with Shroud, Horseman's Helm with Resolve, Drums of Moria and Haste of Soldiers. Like look at the big difference, like this is a total victory for us this time. In the snapshot page we see that we have done almost 300k damage versus 190k damage. Haldir in his Eagle build is definitely the strongest build he can have. In the detailed view we see this. Sentinels have done lots of damage. I guess this is because our Eagles have tanked a lot on the front. Like look at this. No more Eagles left. I do admit that it is very expensive to run this composition, but it is paying off just as you see. And that's basically it. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this one, let me know by leaving a like and consider subscribing. I see you guys next time.